Hi there, I hope you're keeping well. This is Esther from Stampin' Star Creations with the Global Stampin' Video Hop. This month's theme was a mashup with the mini catalogue and Saleabration. So I've chosen the Queen Bee stamp set and matching dies and the Dainty Flowers DSP, which comes free. I think it's with a £90 purchase. So I'm just having a quick flick through the papers to decide which ones I want to use for today's project. I had in mind of making something grungy and torn and just something a little bit different with this paper. So deciding which bit of paper I want, and in the process I thought, oh, I could make a square card just for something a bit different. So once I've managed to cut everything down and collated all my bits of paper, I got tearing. This is such a fun process to do. I know this isn't everybody's cup of tea to go grungy or to tear paper, but there's something quite liberating and fun about just getting loose with tearing the paper. So I'm separating these meadow flowers, and I've got these lovely 3 here and then the border one as a backdrop. Grabbing my scissors and I'm roughing up the edges. Now yes, this will happen particularly if you've got sharp scissors like our Stampin' Up snips. You might actually end up cutting the paper rather than just going along the edge, but that's fine. It's all part of this kind of process and you make a mess as well. So taking out a few of the stamps, I've got the meadowy one and the text, and then I'm using the big B also. And I'm going to incorporate these to create a background on this square piece. Bringing on rich raspberry, and I'm grabbing out my spritzer with some water in it, and just to dampen that image a bit so that it gives that watercolour effect to go with the papers. Now after doing a couple of stamps, I realised actually by the time I add on the flowers there's not going to be enough stamp image showing, so I've come back in and just going to stamp a bit more in the background. Then using Old Olive and then just adding this lovely text scripty background. Then when I grungy up anything or trying to make it look a bit vintagey, my go-to is to use crumb cake, and I'm just taking off the stark white edges of the paper with the blending. Now this torn edge is this cut edge that I got earlier. I'm making it a feature, and I'm just going to roll that paper down and have it folded over and just inking that up with the blender brush. So then coming in with my B and using the soft suede. The bee didn't turn out, it slipped in the process, so I tried again, and this time I used some washi tape to hold it in place. That was much better. Now, I haven't got my watercolour pencils out for ages, so it was quite nice to do something a bit different with watercolour pencils. So I tend to just, with small images like this, just do a kind of rough bit of colouring, and then just using the blender pen to just smush the colour in with a tiny detail. And then adding some greenery in for the leaves, a bit more purple for the flowers, and then using blue in between the wings just to make those stand out a bit more. And again using the blending brush on this to make sure that it's got a nice cohesive theme. I'm very grateful for sticking on the sticky pack, remembering to put the sticky pack sticky adhesive sheet on the back of this gold foil, because it makes life so much easier, especially with delicate dies. So I'm just going to run these through and cut those out. I've cut down a piece of crumb cake, which is just a bit smaller than the 6x6, and as you can see I've cut down some vellum as well, which is, I think it was about 5 1/4 of an inch. Again ruffling up the edges, which is very tricky with vellum. It's not as forgiving as card and it catches a bit more easily. So I went for it. I grabbed it and I scrunched it and I felt very brave, and just go for it. It's a piece of paper. I love the effect of this, and it's just what it needed. So although the edges were okay, having this really cool scrunched up effect I think really added to it. And then you can just scrunch in the areas that aren't scrunched enough. And then here's me trying to flatten it all back down again because our vellum's nice and thick. So coming in with soft suede is a nice darker colour on the crumb cake to show up, to give it that nice vintagey look. and bringing on the nice text stamp again. Now, a lot of this gets covered, but it's just worth having it off on the edges as it does peek through on the final card. So just using soft suede ink to add on the text. Then I decided I've got a bit of vellum left, I might as well cut out a circle with this, so bringing on a retired circle punch and cutting out a bit of a circle because I thought this would look nice to just use for the bee later. So laying on lots of multi-purpose liquid glue and making sure it will stay fast and not move, and then turning it over and just using my bone folder to make sure that does stay. And then here we go, adding on the layers. So there's the vellum circle, and then the flowers, I decided they needed a bit of dimension to make sure that they stood out from the rest. So I'm just laying down the other meadow flowers that we did, and to make sure they don't move, I'm just going to get a tiny bit of glue while they're in place where I want them and just glue them down in place. And then just to neaten up the edge, I just give them a nice tear all the way across so that I know it will sit at the bottom of the page. So adding on some dimension to the top of those meadow flowers and then filling the rest with glue. And then last minute I decided actually if I put it down out of the frame, then you've got a nice texture and you've got a more 3D look to it. So in comes my bee, and then I wanted to put the crown on it, but I was like, no, it doesn't look right. It just didn't sit very well, and I wanted to incorporate it. I was like, oh, where am I going to put it? So trying various places, and in the end I thought, oh, I'll just tuck it out the way in the bottom corner, you know, as a little feature. And then these leaves, I was going to use it like that, but I thought, oh no, it just doesn't look right now that I've cut it out. So I cut them in half, and then I thought if I stick them behind these meadow flowers, it just adds a bit more texture and foliage to the background. I was very thankful for the sticky adhesive sheet at this point because I could just whip it off and stick down this detailed die without too much trouble. Then I tried various bows. They all seemed too thick, no, not quite right, and I just landed on the linen thread, which was perfect, and did a double bow. The bee was stuck up with some more dimensionals, and then I had the fiddly task of adding on these tiny hexagons from the die, and again just peeling off that sticky back paper. So I grouped 3 together at the bottom, and then a couple at the top, and then one last one at the side. And I was left with this lovely outline of the honeycomb. So I'm cutting this in half, and then going to use this as a feature on the card, just tucking it on the side and then linking the hexagons back up together. And then a wink of Stella. I didn't want to cover the whole wings in the wink, so I'm just going over a few of the flowers and then giving it a good old splash over with the wink of Stella, and then coming in with a rich raspberry blend to add some extra spots and splatters to the corners of the card. And there it is, the final piece, nice and decorated in that lovely glitter, and I love the grungy look of this card. Thank you so much for watching along. Please do follow along the hop to find out what everyone else has done for the mashup of Saleabration and mini catalogues. Take care, God bless. Don't forget to subscribe, and thumbs up would be very much appreciated.